Well, good morning, folks. Good morning, good morning. It's good to see all of you here. My name is Bert Meek. I will be the worship associate this morning. And as most of you know, our settled minister, Reverend Bethany Russell Lowe, is away. She's coming back on September 3rd. We've got 3 more Sundays before she graces us with her appearance once again. Is that better lighting for me? And so for the next 2 Sundays, Jamili will be here, our beloved Jamili. She'll be here. And then Reverend Sam Wilson will come for the final Sunday of the month. So lots to look forward to there. When I finish going over the welcome, we'll have another discussion like we have typically before, but I wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up. So be thinking about time when you've traveled to another country, to at least another state, and you've learned something that was a surprise. It could be a pleasant surprise, it could be a not so pleasant surprise, but I'll cue you at the end of this welcome. That'll be the topic that you'll be discussing with your neighbor. So, we have a guest minister this morning, as most of you know. It's Reverend Rika Kauthal. She was originally born in Berlin, Germany. Reverend Rika moved to the U.S. to go to college when she was a young 20 years old, and after graduation, she decided to stay here. And initially, she worked in the field of education and applied linguistics. But she discovered another path that spoke to her and she wanted to follow, and she wanted to become a minister. She was ordained in January 2021, worked as a part-time minister at the UU Church in Anaheim, California. During the pandemic, though, she grew homesick for her beloved Berlin and decided to move back, even though she feared there would be nothing for her to do as a minister there. But when she was back in Berlin, she discovered that there was a Unitarian community in Germany who was eager to hire her. So she's been working with them since July last year. Now she's back, summer vacation in Tucson. Who could argue against that? And she's eager to tell us about her life in Germany, her work with the German Unitarians, parallels and differences to what the practice is here. So let's give Reverend Rika a warm UUCT welcome. Because of the progress that our county has made fighting the virus, although it's creeping back up, we no longer require that masks have to be worn in RE or in our congregation here in worship. If you want to wear a mask, go for it. That is absolutely fine. And please, if you're feeling sick or have any of the COVID symptoms, do yourself and all of us a favor. Mask up, or better yet, watch us from home. Now, based on the last poll that we took of members of our congregation, we are really committed to staying fully vaccinated and boosted. So for all of our sakes, keep that up, and especially for those that are most vulnerable in our congregation. I want to extend another welcome to our online visitors. Perhaps there will be a form for you to fill out, but without Mary here, it's hard to know exactly what we offer. But anyway, you're still welcome. For those of you here in person, if you haven't filled out a guest card, you can do that after the service back in the Welcome Center, back in that corner. So when our service ends, you're welcome to remain here for the social hour. We've got coffee, we got iced tea, I saw lots of lemonade they were making, a few snacks, and of course, wonderful company with all of us. We always need help getting more chairs around the tables and stuff, so anyone who can able to pitch in, we'd appreciate that. If you want to go to the bathroom, you can't go there in Holland anymore, it's too hot. But we have bathrooms down this hall on the left for everyone. Now, as we move more deeply into the sacred space of worship, let us remember that our community strives to be as varied as the blooms on the Sonora Desert in order that we better reflect the wonderful diversity with which Southern Arizona is blessed. So when I gesture to you all the categories of for how people define themselves, please respond in unison with, "We welcome you." So, first, whether you walked or rolled or skipped into today's service, we welcome you. Yes. If you participate in this service here in person, or you're watching us from afar, today or next week, we welcome you. Thank you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whatever cultural or ethnic background you claim, we welcome you. However you identify your gender, and however you choose to express it, we welcome you. And wherever you are in your life's journey and your spiritual path, we welcome you. Thank you. So, remember what I said when I started? So, here's the question again. Turn to your neighbor, even better if it's someone you didn't have breakfast with, and share with them something that you learned while you were traveling that surprised you. A pleasant surprise, perhaps a less than pleasant surprise, but something you learned. If you're joining us online, you can put that in the chat. That'd be great. So, go for it. I love the energy that builds up. And remember, you can keep on talking about this stuff after the service. Liz. Yay, Liz.
The call to worship.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Thank you. Good morning, dear members, friends, and visitors at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tucson. It is such an honor to be speaking to you today and to tell you a little bit about the Unitarians in Germany, another strand of this proudly progressive faith that connects us with so many around the world. This service will be one that's full of information, and I hope it fills you with questions and ideas, with inspiration, with deep moments of wonder, maybe doubt, and new perspectives. But I also hope that this service will offer moments in which each person who's gathered here may find what they most need. May the troubled find peace. May the anxious find calm. May the desolate find comfort. May the lonely find community. May the shamed find redemption. May the strong find moments of challenge, learning, and growth. May we all find joy. Let us begin.
Good timing. So as we prepare to light the chalice here in our sanctuary, I hope that you, all watching us from home, will also light your candle or your chalice. So please, let's read together the chalice lighting by Reverend Laura Horton Ludwig. Fire and water, ancient opposites, sun and ocean, the cradle of life, dancing flame and dancing river, we invoke them together today as we kindle our chalice flame.
Would you please stand as you are in body or spirit and sing, "We Would Be One." We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other to show to pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free. Thank you. Please be seated.
So for our time for all ages today, I had the idea of just doing an informal Ask a German thing. And I assumed there'd be like hordes of little children around me who'd be like, what do you have for breakfast in Germany? Do you go to school? Do Germans really speak German? That's so, like, do you think in German or in English when you speak German? I don't see the hordes of little children, so you have to do that instead. Just ask away. I did get 2 questions ahead of time, so I'll start with them, and during that time you can see if you have any questions. The first one, what is the name of the German potato dumpling? This is a really hard question. So they're big potato. So one, it's because people in Germany have different names. I have 5 different names for German meatballs that I could just rattle off. Like, they don't agree on terms. But like the big German potato dumpling is just Kartoffelkloß, which is just potato dumpling. And then they have the long, thin ones that are more like gnocchi. And I'm blanking on the official, like I've been thinking about it ever since I got the question, and I don't remember. I know in Swabier they call them Bubenspitzle, which is an inappropriate word, and I'm not going to translate it for you. You can come to me after the service, and then I'll do it. But not right now, not on camera. So I feel like I'm failing that question. I apologize. The other one is, how is the Holocaust taught to German elementary and secondary students? It is taught, for once, and quite openly. I went to Germany to school, like, a long time ago. But even then, so what happened was that during the student revolution of the 1960s, that revolution also happened in Germany, and that was when my parents' generation were kind of part of the global movement, but they also took a look at what their parents did, and it was like this intergenerational grappling of like, what did you do? And so my parents' generation then became like teachers and educators and all that stuff, and so I learned about the Holocaust in every possible subject in school, like biology, history, politics, German study, everything. I think now they don't do it as extensively anymore, but it's still definitely taught, and very openly. And at the same time, of course, that didn't mean that after the Holocaust all Nazis disappeared. They may have shut up, but they didn't disappear. And it also means that there are no right-wing people in Germany now, as they are, unfortunately, everywhere in Europe and all over the world, really. So, ask a German. Yes?
I was raised by my grandparents who were German.
Uh-huh.
Everybody is frugal and well-organized and rule-oriented.
Yes. Is everybody as frugal and well-organized as your grandparents in Germany? I mean, yes and no. I would say that in general, those are traits of German culture, and then no culture is a monolith, right? So there are people who are less frugal, and there are people who are less organized, but I do think those are values in German culture, so you probably see that either as behavior or as aspirations. Yeah, I'm not well organized. Yes, please.
Guten Morgen und herzlich willkommen in Tucson.
Dankeschön.
Sorry, okay. So I wanted to ask if you feel comfortable sharing anything from your family's experience of living. I believe you're from Berlin, and so either in West or East, Berlin, and so what that was like.
Oof, this would be, I have to make sure, at some point you have to be like, enough, and cut me off. This could be a sermon in itself. So I grew up in West Berlin, but we had a lot of family in East Germany. So I traveled there a lot when I was little, and I was like, we had like those border crossings that were very intense, and I knew that something was different there. And I remember distinctly when I was around 7, I talked to them and I was like, well, why can we visit you, but you can't visit us? And what I was told back then is like child-appropriate politics, and then people said, maybe this will change in your lifetime. It's probably not going to change in our lifetime. And then 2 years later, the wall fell. And I think it gave me like this deep-seated understanding that like no things can change. Anything can change if we want it to change. And I remember the fall of the wall. It was, I get shivers right now. It was come to me afterwards and I'll talk about it in detail. But a car drove over my foot. We went to one of the border openings and a car drove over my foot, but it was an East German car, so it didn't matter. Yeah. We had another question there. Yes.
One more question.
One more question. Okay.
What was the biggest cultural adjustment you made when you came to school here?
So when I first went out, I went out with a big group of people I didn't know, and we went bowling. And I'm bad at bowling, but I don't care. So I was bad at bowling, but I didn't care. And there was this one person who, like, I kept on being bad, and he kept on smiling at me and saying things like, nice try anyway. You go, girl. And I was just like, who is this person and why is he so mean to me? Because in Germany, if people fail, you just politely ignore it. And I was like, so I started being really mean to him. And then he was like, I'm trying so hard to make this stupid German chick feel welcome, and all she does is be mean to me. And like months later, we reconnected at a college party and sorted it out. But that was my biggest culture shock, I would say.
Oh, you want to do one more?
One more? Okay.
Why is the German beer available at the beer houses and the beer halls, beer gardens? Why is it so good, that fresh beer?
So I have to push back on that one. When I first came, the first time I went to a bar in the US and I ordered a beer, I got really angry and I wanted to go to the bartender and yell at him because I was like, just because I'm a foreigner, you can't water down my beer. And then everybody was like, no, that's just what it tastes like here. But with American microbreweries, you have really good beer now. Like Germans too, but you have excellent beer in the US now, so take some pride in your own beer. I will leave you with that.
Oh, I love the questions. The kids have missed all this good discussion now. That's a shame. So, excuse me. It's time now for us to participate in our weekly ritual of joys and sorrows. And Reverend Rika let me know that Unitarians who saw this practice here in the United States and then went to Germany brought this tradition to them. So while we're doing this here, they're following the same rituals. I love it. Remember that each of us carries joy and sadness inside. Now, how we feel may not be obvious at all to those around us, but our emotions are very real and very present for each and every one of us. And we need a time and a place to honor those feelings. So this, our shared bowl over here, which we use for joys and sorrows every week, it holds the big rocks, which signify our collective joys and sorrows, celebrations and mournings. And they're strong enough to hold our pain and our excitement and love and anger. And in just a minute, this bowl will be filled with smaller stones that you add to them to symbolize your individual joys and your individual sorrows. Personally, I was unable to come to church last Sunday. I was busy restocking my refrigerator. Following Friday's storm, we'd lost electricity for 26 hours. Everything was spoiled. But as aggravating as that was for me, I couldn't help but feel gratitude that I and my family had the means to recover, and think about all those folks who did not, who are still struggling with something that I've been able to bounce back from. And we who live in the desert know that water is a life-sustaining but a scarce resource. Let us remember those walking through the desert right now who need access to water. So we pour water from this jug to represent the jugs of water that are left behind by our ministry partner, No More Deaths, to help those coming into our country at least have a chance of surviving this perilous journey. The decorations on the jug are made by our children in RE, because No More Deaths also decorates their jugs to show that this water is a gift from us to them. For those of you who wish to share your joy or your sorrow with us online, you can go to menti.com, and there's the number, 8944-558. Those of you who are here in the sanctuary with us, you want to send your thoughts also to Menti. Brian Moon has got his little handheld computer right there. He will forward them for you. And if you're here in person, have a joy or sorrow you wish to share, we're welcome to come up, line down the middle, and come up to the table and place a stone to symbolize how you're feeling. Danielle.
The following is a prayer that my mother shared with me when I was a teenager, although my mother is not the praying type. And it has stayed with me ever since, and today I want to share it with you. It is "Teach Me the Art of Small Steps" from Antoine Saint-Exupéry, the author of The Little Prince. Lord, I'm not praying for miracles and visions. I'm only asking for strength for my days. Teach me the art of small steps. Make me clever and resourceful so that I can find important discoveries and experiences among the diversity of days. Help me use my time better. Present me with the sense to be able to judge whether something is important or not. I pray for the power of discipline and moderation, not only to run throughout my life, but also to live my days reasonably and observe unexpected pleasures and heights. Save me from the naive belief that everything in life has to go smoothly. Give me the sober recognition that difficulties, failures, fiascos, and setbacks are given to us by life itself to make us grow and mature. Send me the right person at the right moment who will have enough courage and love to utter the truth. I know that many problems solve themselves, so please, teach me patience. You know how much we need friendship. Make me worthy of this nicest, hardest, riskiest, and most fragile gift of life. Give me enough imagination to be able to share with someone a little bit of warmth in the right place, at the right time, with words or with silence. Spare me the fear of missing out on life. Do not give me the things I desire, but the things I need. Teach me the art of small steps. Amen.
Excuse me. Apologies, technical difficulties.
Maybe we're all different, but we're still the same. We all got the blood of Eden running through our veins. I know sometimes it's hard for you to see. You're caught between just who you are and who you want to be. If you feel alone and lost and need a friend, remember every new beginning is some beginning's end. Welcome to wherever you are. This is your life. You made it this far. Welcome. You've gotta believe that right here, right now, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Welcome to wherever you are. When everybody's in and you're left out, and you feel you're drowning in the shadow of a doubt, everyone's a miracle in their own way. Just listen to yourself, not what other people say. When it seems you're lost, alone, and feeling down, remember everybody's different. Just take a look around. Welcome to wherever you are. This is your life. You made it this far. Welcome. You gotta believe. Right here, right now, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Be who you wanna be. Be who you are. Everyone's a hero. Everyone's a star. When you wanna give up and your heart picture perfect. God makes no mistakes. Welcome to wherever you are. This is your life. You made it this far. Welcome. You've got to believe. Right here, right now, you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Wherever you are, this is your life. You made it thus far.
I say welcome.
Wherever you are, this is your life. You made it thus far.
I say welcome. Welcome.
Oh, Bon Jovi better watch out, guys. This is good. This is good. Thank you, Robert. Thank you. It's time now for our offertory. Please remember that we have all been warmed by fires which we did not light. We have drunk from wells which we did not dig. Our church counts on time, love, energy, and treasure from each one of us. So the baskets will be passed around in just a minute. You can send a check to the office if you want. You can donate online to UUC Tucson/donate, or you can text 833-361-5796. Go for it.
When I planned this service, I wanted to do a fairly straight up comparison of like, this is what the German Unitarians do, this is what you do. And then as I was writing it, it became a different thing that is a little bit more complex and maybe a little bit more convoluted and also really important. And it's on the long side, and I'm watching the time. So I'm going to skip over most of the parts of the reading, and in my sermon, I'm also going to see where I can skip over. So if sometimes they're really bad transitions, that is me respecting your time. Like the Unitarian Universalists here, the Unitarians in Germany are also a religious community free of dogma. Everybody is free to explore their own thoughts. But as a community, they felt it important to formulate some common ideas, some foundational thoughts that they came up with their lay community. So they came up with that in a very long process of yes, a long process. They wrote them in 1995 and then slightly changed them in 2015, and I wanted to read all of it for you, and honestly, that would just take too long. So I'm just gonna maybe pick one or two. On Unitarian faith, we believe that everything that exists is a small part of a bigger picture. Everything that exists is therefore connected in some way and has an important role. We regard ourselves as a part of this entity. We're sustained by it and have an influence over it. Everything we do has an effect on our surroundings. In and around us, we can feel a great creative power, which many of think of as being divine. It is at work on both a large and a small scale and is constantly present even if we are not always aware of it. Unitarian religion is open to new knowledge and new experiences. The other headings that they have is on religion, on life, on human life, and on social life. And I'm going to read the one on human life, and then I'm just going to transition straight into the sermon. Human life is one of the innumerable manifestations of nature. It is integrated in the evolution of life. Each person is an indivisible whole who develops physically, spiritually, and mentally in interdependence with their environment. Although people are different individuals, they have equal rights. Due to the human ability to understand and evaluate various relationships, each person is responsible for what he or she does or does not do, to themselves, to other people, and to the world around them. In all decisions that humans take and in everything that may happen to them, there lies the chance for further development as well as for risk. Strengths and weaknesses, strokes of fate, and actual wrongdoing must be dealt with and mastered. Death is the end of human life. There's no certainty about what follows. This awareness strengthens our endeavor to live our lives consciously and meaningfully. Each person leaves traces which endure after their death. If you want to read the whole thing, email me and I'll send it to you. You may have recognized some ideas in these foundational thoughts. Part of them might sound familiar to you. Maybe you also thought, gosh, that's some heady stuff, and maybe that too seemed really familiar. It certainly struck me as familiar when, in fall of 2020, I first heard about the Unitarians in Germany. During that time, the Board of Trustees of the Unitarians in Germany, or the Unitarier, as I will now call them, reached out to the UUA to ask for assistance on different projects from German-speaking ministers. The reason for that is that, and that is another major difference, they don't traditionally employ clergy. They are a lay community. And while this was central to their identity for a long time, they came to a point where they are like, we can't do this alone anymore. They're down to less than 400 members all over Germany, and most of them are above the retiring age, and they simply feared that they would not exist much longer. So in this way, reaching out was their Hail Mary pass. And I was one of the ministers who answered their calling. At first, it was supposed to be project work. Then I mentioned I'm moving to Germany. Then they were like, ooh. And then we spent about a year getting to know each other on Zoom while I was still here until we realized this might be a good fit. So when I moved to Germany last year, they hired me full-time to work with their existing congregations and the community at large, and also to build a new Unitarian community in Berlin. And I'm going to talk about that later a little bit, but I wanted to first talk a little bit more about the history and the theology of the Unitarier. As you probably know, most Unitarians have their roots in anti-Trinitarianism, the belief that God is God, Jesus was a person, and the Holy Spirit, I mean, who knows? The Transylvanian Unitarians are a good example. This is not so with the Unitarier. And I guess you might say that makes them a cousin rather than a sibling. They found their beginning in the free religious movement in Germany, which started during formats, a revolutionary period between 1830 and 1845. It was a time of social upheaval. The Holy Roman Empire was over, the French Revolution had happened, the Napoleonic Wars had happened. Things were starting to shift. At that point, Germany was not a united country yet. It was just like all those little kingdoms that spoke the same language, but otherwise did their own thing. So it was a time when people were looking for new models. There were calls for liberalism and secularism. The increasing economic injustice made visible during industrialization kind of strengthened calls for socialism. And there was also nationalism, but in that case, Germany and nationalism, right? But in that case, it was to unite Germany, to have actually a united German state rather than all those little kingdoms. And that happened in 1871. So during that revolutionary period, the free religious movement in Germany formed, and they were turning against existing power structures of the church and instead sought a secular religious life influenced by rationalism and enlightenment and founded on the values of humanism and human rights, tolerance, and religious freedom. Many of the groups were still agnostic, were still Christian, but they were definitely agnostic and atheist influences, and also pantheistic and panentheistic models, and a return to nature, the circle of life and death, and the seasons as religious inspiration. So maybe that sounds familiar to you. It sounded really familiar to some of the free religious movement people in Germany who went to a Congress of Liberal Faith around the 1900s, where they met American and British Unitarians were like, oh my God, these are my people. We want to be that. So they left, at least this group left behind the free religious movement in Germany, and from then on called themselves Unitarier and really invested in these international connections. But taking on this name, Unitarier, also broadened their theology. So as I said, they were never anti-Trinitarian, but they, in the name, stressed this idea of unitas, or a larger whole. To them, it signifies that we are all connected with each other, with nature, and with something even bigger, whatever that might be for the individual: love, compassion, the divine, spirit of life. So in that way, the Unitarier in Germany are quite universalist in nature. They developed further and further away from Christianity and found spirituality rooted in nature and seasons, rationality, science, and enlightenment. And another thing that played a really big role for them culturally was the Bündische Jugend, which in a very large scheme is the German equivalent of the Scouts, right? So they went like in nature and camping and hiking and all those things. And this movement is still a big part of the Unitarian youth culture in Germany today. And a lot of the older Unitarians also were Unitarian scouts in their youth. And it has a big influence of their culture. At almost every retreat, and they do like retreats, at some point there will be a campfire, and then people gather around and drink chai, which sounds like tea, but it contains copious amounts of alcohol. They make Stockbrot. For like Stockbrot, you find yourself a random stick, a stock, and then you wrap some dough around it and grill it in the fire. And my daughter told me if you're expecting s'mores, it's a letdown. And then they chat with each other and they sing old campfire songs. And last time I was there, already knowing I would be here, I made a covert video for you that you can now see. I tried not to record people but the fire, but you can see the Stockbrot and you can hear them singing. They're pretty good at singing without music. They don't do it well during services, but if there's a fire. So as I mentioned before, the Unitarier are down to less than 400 members, and these members are getting older. They are pretty good at retaining their own youth. So when I say siblings, cousins, friends, I mean that. There are siblings, cousins, and some friends. But they are bad at getting in new people. And you may ask yourself, well, why is that? And I wish I could say, well, don't we all have that problem, and leave it at that, but that would not be the whole truth. And it wouldn't explain this extreme shrinkage of the Unitarier, who had close to 10 times more members in the 80s. So what happened? Well, you may have noticed that I left out an important part of Unitarian history, the period of Nazi Germany. Of course, this poses the question, what were they doing at that time? And maybe you're hoping for a story like the Czech Unitarians and Norbert Scharpek, and no, I have to disappoint you, it was not that. During Nazi Germany, large parts of the Unitarian community were shut down because of their values and their international connections, but parts of the Unitarian theology, the anti-Christian attitude, the focus on nature, on solstice and equinox, and also the influence of pre-Christian Germanic traditions, was a theology that fit really, really well with the Nazi blood and soil ideology at the time. So there were a few Nazis who were really taken by their misguided interpretation of the Unitarian idea, and enough Unitarians left over to be like, sure, let's do this. Some of them hoped it would become a big thing. It didn't, because the war ended, but then what happened afterwards? You had the return of the Unitarier who were shut down during Nazi Germany, the ones who were invested in a progressive faith and international connections. Unitarians you would probably recognize. And then you had those who had thrived during Nazi Germany and who had no problem combining Unitarianism and the Nazi ideology. You also had a really prolific minister at the time, one of the last paid ministers for a long time, who, I don't know if he was close to Nazi ideology or if he was just an opportunist, I really don't know, but who would just go out and recruit anybody. He was just like, come here. And then in this really volatile mix, you had army officers from Great Britain and America who were Unitarians themselves and who asked themselves, how can we turn those Nazi Germans into good democratic people, right? I mean, we have to do something with them. And they were like, maybe Unitarianism will do the trick. So they said, sure, go ahead. Form Unitarian groups, recruit whoever you want, and then talk amongst yourselves. I admire their faith in Unitarianism, and also this is not how it turned out. Unitarianism by itself was not enough to turn Nazis into good citizens. So what you had for the next few decades was a fairly big Unitarian group in Germany with up to 6,000 members at times, most of them being progressive Unitarians who did some really amazing work, and then also a smaller but still big contingent of Nazi Unitarians, and I mean Nazi Unitarians, who for decades those two groups would just fight with each other. Unfortunately, even though the Nazis were smaller in number, they had some really prolific leaders, and they had a scholar amongst them, a well-recognized one, who kept on writing books on cultural and religious history where she had no problem combining Nazi ideology with Unitarian thoughts. And the progressive Unitarians, as you can imagine, were really unhappy with the situation, but they said, what can we do? What can we do when everyone is welcome? What can we do when all beliefs are welcome? So they hoped that if they just kept on discussing this, Maybe if they just kept on stressing their Unitarian beliefs and they just came up with better arguments, something might change and some minds would change, and sadly, that didn't. And the groups kept on fighting with each other until push came to shove, and in the late 80s, they finally split apart. About 300 Nazi Unitarier left the group and formed their own and very quickly lost all significance. And the progressive ones were left to pick up the pieces and decide how to move forward. But then Antifa, which already existed in Germany, became aware of them. And some of their now former members. And to them, it appeared that the Unitarier were really just some kind of Nazi front organization. So they started to protest them quite openly. And even though these members did exist and the suspicion and criticism was definitely justified, there was also a good bit of nuance to the situation at the time, the ongoing conflicts, the eventual split. And although Antifa has a lot of strong suits, nuance isn't always one of them. So they kept on campaigning against the Unitarier until many of them left the community. Everyone else was eager to keep a really low profile, fearful of personal and professional repercussions of what would happen if they became known as this so-called Nazi sect. I'll keep it really short because I know we're out of time. But from 1990 to 210, they did an enormous amount of work. They became very quiet, very inward focused, and they did everything you can do to work through this mess. They studied their own, what had happened, their own history, where they could have done things differently. They had difficult conversation. They worked on conflict and mending and healing. They threw themselves into international work and international connections. They came up with the foundational thoughts and later on guiding principles, which again would be really familiar to you, principles that stress interdependence, compassion, environmental protection, and human rights. They released statements supporting the LGBTQ community, same-sex marriage, and people of all backgrounds, and they let go of some special things. Songs they used to sing that they are not singing anymore, and also their symbol, and this is where I would need the next slide, please. Their previous symbol were those runes. It's like pretty much the runes for life and death overlaid, and that was close to this theology of the circle of life. Runes were another thing that were ruined by Hitler in Germany, so they were like, we have to let go of these runes, and came up with a symbol of the right, but it was a hard process. It was similar to letting go of the chalice. There was a lot of heartbreak. So here we find ourselves, 20 years later. During those 20 years, very little publicity work was done, which is why they didn't recruit any new members. And now they are down to 400. Most of them are old, and they don't know how to move forward, and that is where I come in. I was there, I am their Hail Mary, and I don't know if I can save this, right? This whole situation poses many questions. How do we move forward balancing a past like this while also stepping into the future? What exactly do we mean when we say everyone is welcome? When we talk about freedom of belief, do we really mean all systems and all ideologies? And where do we draw the line? And how do we draw the line? It poses the question of redemption. How can we redeem ourselves after the most horrific mistakes? Can Unitarianism be redeemed after such tainting? Are our ideas and values worth redeeming? I don't have the blind faith of the officers who believed Unitarianism alone can turn Nazis around, but I do have enough faith to say yes, our ideas and values are worth it. They deserve the redemption. That's why I took this job. And I do believe in my Unitarier in Germany. I studied them carefully and even suspiciously, and I do believe they have done the work to redeem themselves. I trust them. And I put them to the test, and they passed. And that's why I bring you this story with care and the hope that I can trust you with it, because this is a time of not quite a significant change and upheaval in the UUA, but there is change, and there is some sweltering conflict, and I think this whole story brings a different understanding and a different nuance to that conflict. So I hope you can cherish it in that way without just turning it into a talking point. Because I think the story of the Unitarians in Germany in its entirety is one of value, not necessarily because it is a happy story, but because it is a complex one of breaking and of mending and one to learn from. It's also a story that's not over. As I said, I'm there to build a new congregation in Berlin, and that can, they are like, do what you need to. It can look very, very different from what was there before. I spent a year writing a concept. Now I'm going to put that into place. And if you want me to talk about that, maybe a year or two from now, just call up Julie and Robert. They'll know how to reach me. So there are exciting times ahead. So after this turn to the past with you, I'll return to Berlin and work on building a Unitarian future there. And I'm excited. Let's see what the next years bring. And hopefully, at some point, I can tell you or any other congregation in the US a more inspiring and a happier story, similarly thought-provoking, but with a better end. Wouldn't that be something? A story of Unitarian redemption and hope. May it be so, and blessed be. And it wasn't I who picked our next hymn, number 108, My Life Goes On, an Endless Song, but I think it's the perfect choice to follow this sermon, because how could we Unitarians and Universalists ever keep from singing?
Please rise and body your spirit. My life goes on an endless song.
Far off him that hails the
I want to know who amongst us sounds like seal lions there, but I think we do a little better than they do. But anyway, it's time now for our chalice extinguishing. As we prepare to do that here in the sanctuary, those of you who are watching us from home, it's time now to extinguish your candle. So please read along with me a blessing of darkness and light, written by the Reverend Amy Zucker Morgenstern. Great. Blessed is the dark in which our dreams stir and are revealed. Blessed is the dark of earth where seeds come to life. Blessed are the depths of the ocean where no light shimmers, the womb of all earthly life. Blessed is the light into which we awake, the light that sparkles on the waters, that calls the tree forth from the seed and calls the shadow forth from the tree. Blessed are we as we move through darkness and through light.
Yes, take care of things, and it was a lot of fun. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. The guitar was crunchier like that. I had a cleaner sound through all of